Hello, in this video we're going to learn how to create and save a macro. A macro is a program within Excel that records and then saves steps that we do often. For instance, if I always type my name in cell A1 before I start a spreadsheet, then that's a repetitive task that I could create into a macro, and then I could just simply apply the macro to have that piece of work done each time for me to save time. So let's see how that's done. We're going to create it and then we're going to save it, because the saving process when you've created a macro is one of the most important. So let's do the two steps now. So the first thing I'm going to record is I want Excel to always go to A1 when I start a worksheet, regardless of where my cell pointer is when the document opens. So I want the first step to be go to A1. Then I want the cell to be formatted for bold and 14-point text, and then I want my first and last name in. So those are the three things we're going to record in this macro. So to start, we go to our view menu, we go to our macro way over on the right, and we're going to click on record macros. So we're going to give this one a name. I'm just going to call it name because that's what this macro is going to do. And then I'm going to apply a shortcut key. Most of the Control plus letters are already taken with standard Microsoft commands. So I'm going to hold my Shift key down and type the letter N as in name, and my shortcut key then will be Control plus Shift plus N. I'm going to store the macro in this workbook, and I'll give it a bit of a description. So this macro will move the cell pointer to A1 and will then format and type my name. Okay, so that's good enough for a description, and if anybody else is looking at this document and wants to know what these macros do, there's a bit of a description for them to see. I'm going to click on OK, but before I do that, I want to mention that right now Excel is not recording anything. It's just we're just getting this macro set up. The recorder doesn't start until I click OK. So when I do that, I want you to keep your eye on the bottom of the screen over here, beside the word ready. As soon as the recording starts, you'll see a white square appear. So I'm going to click on OK. And then you'll see that white square. If I hover my mouse, it says a macro is currently recording, and I can click on this square to stop the recording. What you need to remember now is that everything you do on the computer now is being recorded until you click on that box. So that means that every time I type something, I click the mouse. If I go up to another menu, anything that I'm doing, it's all trying to be recorded in that macro that we called name. So it's really important when we're finished to make sure we click on that to stop the recording, because if we don't and we keep working, Excel will continue to try to record everything we're doing. And so you can imagine if we're going to open a new file, or we're closing a file, or we're going to the network, all of that is trying to be recorded, and at some point your system will crash and Excel will get caught in a loop because it won't be able to continue to record everything. So it's important to remember to click on that when you're finished. So the first thing we want to record is our cell pointer being moved to A1. So there's a command on the keyboard called the Go To command, and it's the F5 key. It brings up the Go To box, and I'm just going to type A1, click OK, and my cell pointer is returned then to A1. The other thing you need to remember, if you're formatting, if you wanted to format text, so I want it to be bold and 14, you need to do the formatting first and then type when you're recording. Otherwise, Excel won't remember what it is you're trying to do. So I want 14 bold. I've set that, and now I'm going to type my name, press enter, And then the final thing I'm going to do is double click between my column headings A and B so that the column width is widened to accommodate my name. So I'm finished. Those are the only things I wanted to record. So now I can click on the square at the bottom, and you'll see that it changes from a solid to a hollow, so that you know that the recording has stopped. So now, how do I know that I have a macro recorded? Well, I can go back up to my View menu. I can go to Macros, and I can view. And I have one there now called Name. So I know that I have a macro in there. I won't know if it works until I go to apply it, right? So let's create one more macro just so that we have two in there and you can see this process again. So I've already got the one that will return the macro to A1. I'm going to create one now that will insert 2 blank rows and move my name down to row 3. All right, so I'm going to go back up to macro. I'm going to go to macro, record. This one I'm going to call insert rows. Notice in the name there's no space in between, just like when we're naming ranges, we don't put a space in. I'm going to do Control-Shift-I for the shortcut key, and this macro will insert 2 blank rows at the top of the spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to click OK, and again you'll notice down here that it fills in as a solid. That means it's recording. And all I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to go and highlight row 1 and 2. I'm going to move into that selected space. I'm going to right click, click on Insert, and it inserted 2 rows and it moved my name down to row 3. That's all I wanted for this macro, so I'm going to go down and click on the box so that I can stop the recording. And now if I go up and view my macros, there's 2 of them there. So I've created 2. So now the most important part is that I have to save this worksheet. So I'm going to save it as, I'm going to save it onto my desktop. Okay, just because that's where I want to put it. But here's the most important part, where it says Save as Type. So I guess I could call this one Macros. In the Save as Type, I have to change that to an Excel macro-enabled workbook. Notice it has a different extension, Excel macro, okay? So Excel macro-enabled workbook. If when you're saving your macros, if you don't choose the type as Excel macro-enabled workbook, then the next person who opens that document up, or the next time you open it up, your macros won't be there. So you need to make sure you save it as an macro-enabled. Click on Save. So now it's a document called macro. It's got the extension that tells me that you've saved it as a macro enabled. Okay, now I'm going to go to File New. I'm just going to open a blank workbook, and I'm going to try to apply those 2 macros that we've created. So I'm going to click on View, click on Macro. I'm going to view my macros, and there's 2 of them there. So let's see, I'm going to do Name first. I'll click on Name, click on Run, and there it is. So then I can apply the second one. I can go to View, click on Insert Rows, and Run, and there it inserted the 2 rows, moved my name down to the 3rd. So that's how you create and save a macro in Microsoft Excel.